Here we are in the parking lot. It's snowing out. We're by the Natural Resource Building and we're heading over to the Climate Summit Rally at the Capitol campus. Man, that looks good. Alright, this is Jimbo Jitsu actually reporting for TCTV Channel 22. We are here live at the Climate Summit on the first day of legislative session 2013, Olympia, Washington, Capitol campus. Alright, it's a little before noon at the, I think it's January 14th, Monday, first day of legislative day, 105-day legislative session. Must be nice to work 105 days out of the year. And we've got a little bit of gathering going on. I'm going to go take up a better spot now that I've done a panoramic. Yeah, good. It's the opening day of the legislative session and people are here. And this is basically about environmental policy, jobs policy, so they're saying we want sustainable, clean energy and jobs. We don't want coal. We don't need coal for jobs. We can get jobs in other ways that are better. And so I think that's what I would say this is all about. And there's lots of reasons for that. There's speakers and we have music today and people are here from Seattle and other far and wide. And it's a good turnout. It's 27 degrees. There's snow. So yeah. What do you
These days, if somebody says, "How are you, Tom?" I say, "I'm fine if it weren't for climate change and the threat of nuclear annihilation." Climate change has always been a big concern of mine. You can see with as many cars burning fossil fuel and coal plants burning coal and pollution surrounding us that eventually it would bring on our demise. And now we really have to take some serious steps to restructure the way we live. We've been talking about Al Gore this morning and Al Gore's carbon footprint, that we should all aspire to have a much lower carbon footprint. It needs to be a collective action. We need to structure the way business is done so that it's not controlled by corporations who will continue to mine coal and continue with competition and greed to accumulate dollars as opposed to working and prioritizing saving the planet. So I'm here to help with all that. I'm part of an organization called the Public Power Initiative. We're on a campaign to bring public power and control public power on the local level with electricity resources, to write out the mega conglomerate that owns the electricity company, Puget Sound Energy. We were on the ballot this fall and we're alive working to take local control over the energy resources and do a better job to reduce the carbon footprint and carbon dioxide emissions and provide power to power consumers.
So, judging by your Beyond Coal Exports t-shirt and your interest in public-controlled power, do you feel that public-controlled power would have a greater emphasis on green energy production?
I think public control of everything would have a better effect. That at this time in history, we need to shift to public control and away from corporate control. We need to figure out how to do that, however that can be done. We need to take the steps. There are a lot of ideas about how to do that. The Wall Street system is not working. The global corporate system is not working. We need to figure out something that works, and we need to do it fast because we're headed down the tubes.
Let me get a shot of your button there. Alright.
But it's an old song, I had to change it. Times ain't what they used to be. As I went walking that super highway below the gray haze and sooty skyway, I was arrested for hitchhiking on the freeway. They said it don't belong to me. No, it ain't my land, and it ain't your land. Could be a rich land, but it's a poor land. Because of the few that hold it in their tight grip hands so that it don't belong to you or me. As I was younger, and in my schooling, I learned and followed by all the rulings. I never dreamed that they were only fooling. I put my teachers lie to me. But as time passed and I grew older, and the world around me got a little colder, well then a voice came calling at my shoulder, said it don't belong to you or me. No, it ain't my land, and it ain't your land. Could be a rich land, but it's a poor land. Because of the few that hold in their tight grip hands so that it don't belong to you or me. From the boardrooms of corporations to the back roads of desperate situations, it's a confused and disunited nation, all the way from sea to shining sea. From the urban war zones of the busted streetlights to the toxic wastelands of Nevada test sites, from the open strip mines to the clear-cut forest. Oh, it's a sad sight to see. I see the downsides, I see the layoffs, the corporate welfare, politicians' payoffs. I see the breadlines that never make the headlines, because they are not so entertaining on TV. When they can reduce you to just a number, when they can knock you down and they can plow you under, and when the only thing that matters is the dollar, then you know it don't belong to you or me. No, it ain't my land, and it ain't your land. Could be a rich land, but it's a poor land. Because of the few that hold it in their tight grip hands so that it don't belong to you or me. Now there was a time when the song was greater, but that was then. And this is later, and there's a hole in the heart that's like a crater, and they say it's going to be the death of me. So let's take this song back, let's take this country, take back our future. It's our duty to stand up tall so that everyone can see that this land will belong to you and me, and it will be your land, and it will be my land, from California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land will belong to you and me.
We're doing a good job. You guys are great. Hold it nice and tight. Yeah. You got stays there and help protect the frozen in place.
We need somebody over there.
Government doesn't serve its citizens. But if we want to tackle the climate crisis, if we want to tackle the jobs crisis, we want to tackle many of the hundreds of problems we're neglecting right now, we're going to have to stop demonizing government and make it serve we the people. And Washington State may well lead this country in awareness of the climate crisis, but it's time to lead this country in action as well. We need to put public resources into green jobs and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Let Washington State lead. Come on, let Washington State lead. Let Washington State lead. And while we're letting Washington State lead, let's press our national leaders to take national action too. Right now, we spend as much on war and military facilities as about the same as the rest of the world combined. Far more than we need. We should take some of that waste and use it to fund green jobs and green energy. Wind farms, not warfare. Come on, wind farms, not warfare. 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 Okay, I hope you don't mind that. I'll keep it short and let you go on to the next speaker.
Good, thank you. Thank you. For both of you. Both, okay. Okay. Carlo Levy and Joey Gray are activists with Tar Sands International from Seattle. And Carlo is an independent activist based in Edmonds. He's been very active fighting tar sands, coal exports, drilling in the Arctic, and has also been promoting community solar and sustainable lifestyles. Joey Gray is a librarian and an independent activist with Tar Sands Action Seattle. She's helping to educate people throughout our region about the dangers of tar sands fuel and about the many things that we can do to protect this place that we call home. I want to welcome these two folks. I haven't met them before. I'm looking forward to hearing them now. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joey Gray and I'm from here in Olympia. I was born just right over there many years ago, and since that time this region has become paved over and more of the trees are gone, and we've all experienced that, and this is the time when we can start shifting that. We live in a place that is surrounded by water. These estuaries are the transformational place between the freshwater and the saltwater at the base of the Salish Sea that extends all the way up to the north end of Vancouver Island. This whole watershed is being affected profoundly by tar sands and other fossil fuels, and so I'm going to focus on the tar sands here today. But first I want to recognize the Deschutes River and the Nisqually River coming down from the Cascades, and T. Swank, our Mount Rainier, and her sister Mount St. Helens. And the water coming from those areas and the fire from those mountains are part of this place we call home. I want to recognize the sun and the rain from the south and our big mother to the west, the Pacific Ocean, who's being acidified terribly by our actions. And I also want to say this is my first job was here in this building. Can you hear me? Okay, okay. I was a page for the Washington State Senate, and so I'm back here outside saying we are calling on our legislators to, in every single policy decision and law that they enact this session, to consider the climate and to consider the fuel reduction, conservation policies, and ways that we can live sustainably, like bicycling and growing food here at home. You know, all those things we can do are really powerful. And I also want to thank the Nisqually and the Chehalis and the Squaxin and the Skokomish people for taking care of the water here. We have many allies. We've seen just in the last year or two the Occupy movement rise up and say things that we've all been feeling for a long time, and that sense of being out there with strangers and saying, we're together in this, and these issues are all connected, and we can change it. And the tar sands are a beautiful example of that, as horrifying as this mess is. And it's the Alberta tar sands are, if you were to drive to Calgary, Alberta, that's about 15 hours from here, over by Banff and up across the Rocky Mountains. And then about 3 hours north of that is Edmonton, and then these gigantic oil excavations. It's not like drilling for oil, it's scraping the boreal forest off the earth, and these forests are slow growing, sparser forests than we know here, and taking swaths of these forests apart, like the size, they want to take the size of England. It's unimaginable, and the people who go there are prepared for it to look like Mordor, and it's worse. And where that oil is coming It's coming from pipelines in this network. Already, the Kinder Morgan company owns a pipeline called the Trans Mountain Pipeline that comes down from Edmonton to Burnaby near Vancouver, BC. And that's been happening for 50 or 60 years now. And the Kinder Morgan company is owned by Richard Kinder, who is formerly the COO of Enron. Is this who we want to trust with our environment? No. So they have plans, or I should say proposals, and it's a harebrained scheme. It's a fantasy. They want to say it's plans. It's not plans. It's not. We can't let it happen. What they want to do is double or more this pipeline coming down, letting super tankers go through the Salish Sea out from Vancouver, around by Port Angeles, through by the San Juans, and out to global markets. And this isn't about us having more oil here ourselves, why we would want that anyway. And I can assure you that the people in Beijing this week don't want any more fossil fuel in their air either, because the city is basically being shut down from pollution. So there's this gigantic network of pipelines coming out from the Alberta tar sands. It's right up in the middle. It's a really hard to get to place for exports, and so they're trying to build pipelines all the way out to Maine, Portland, Maine, out down to Texas, which Carlo's going to talk about. This proposed expansion into our waters, and then the Enbridge's proposed Northern Gateway pipeline up to Haida Gwaii, which somebody mentioned earlier has just had in October a 7.7 earthquake, and just earlier this month a 7.5 earthquake. It's a terrible place for a fossil fuel port. So I want to talk a little bit about things we can do. We can specifically ask our legislators this session to pass stronger climate rules in every law, to examine the fuel sourcing for our vehicles that our state money buys. We can do that in our municipalities as well. The state of Washington is a customer, and we as the people of Washington state can say, we don't want this stuff. We don't want it in the 5 refineries that are in Washington state. We don't want it in our vehicles, and we don't want it in Puget Sound. I try to exemplify in my life some of those changes. I used to have a career where I traveled internationally, and I've given up that career. I don't want to get legitimacy anymore from my flights. It's something that is part of my past. You know, we've all lived in whatever ways we were expected to live growing up, and I want to end with this quote about success, because we have a lot of media telling us what success should be in our culture, and part of this transformation is about redefining what success is. The planet doesn't need more successful people. It desperately needs more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of every shape and form. It needs people who will live well in their places, right here, with our water and our wind. It needs people of moral courage, willing to join the fight and to make the world habitable and humane. And these needs have little to do with the success as our cultures defined it. And I want to thank everybody for being here, and the organizers especially, and all of our allies across the world, and hand it over to Carlo now to talk about the Keystone XL pipeline. Thank you.
Heard about the Keystone XL pipeline? Yeah. Everybody, okay, so we all know that it's the fuse to the largest carbon bomb in North America, because it would basically allow the expansion of the tar sands, and we've already heard from Joey, you know, how destructive the tar sands are, and it would basically mean that the climate crisis would be unrepairable. So, as all of you know, back in January 2012, Obama delayed the authorization of the Keystone XL pipeline till a more thorough environmental review got done. But he only did so because of huge public opposition, which was spurred by the largest act of civil disobedience the environmental movement has seen in over a generation. And I was one of those 1,200 people who got arrested outside the White House in August 2011. I was also there to join 12,000 other people to circle the White House several times over on November 6, 2011. So you can imagine how happy we were with the results of putting our bodies on the line, you know, so quickly. After a few months, Obama was making this great decision. But it wasn't very long before TransCanada, the Canadian company that's building the pipeline, decided to split the project in two. And with Obama's blessing, the southern leg of the Keystone Pipeline started being built from Oklahoma to Texas. Okay, so that's currently happening now. I don't know how many people know about that. Fortunately, a small group of young activists got together with affected Oklahoma and Texas landowners and community members and started the tar sands blockade. How many people have heard of the tar sands blockade? All right. So they've been taking sustained, non-violent, direct actions to physically stop and delay the pipeline by doing tree sit-ins, by chaining themselves, locking themselves to construction machinery. Over 30 of them have been arrested so far, but they've been really, really inspiring scores of people across the country and the world. And they inspired me so much that I was finally able to save up some money and join them in Texas 2 weeks ago for a training action camp with 100 other environmental activists, and it was a really powerful, special, beautiful experience for all of us. One of the things that they're really good at is not only focusing on the environmental and climate impacts, but also looking at components such as environmental justice and environmental racism. The way First Nations in Alberta are being affected, you know, by the poisoning and destruction of their lands and water. The way the communities that suffer the worst health effects from the refineries in the Gulf Coast tend to be low-income Latino and African American communities. So we always have to keep that in mind and build alliances with those communities and show solidarity too. So last Monday, 100 of us descended on downtown Houston and stormed the lobbies of 2 buildings with TransCanada offices and stopped business as usual by doing die-ins, street theater, all kinds of non-violent tactics. So that was a really powerful experience. In spite of all this, most of us are expecting Obama to authorize the northern leg of the Keystone Pipeline in the coming months. So there's a lot more blockading to do, okay? And the closest place from here is probably going to be eastern Montana. So when the time comes, so what I'm really trying to get at here is that if we really want to solve the climate crisis, we are going to have to get more involved in activism and putting our bodies on the line. You know, we also have to follow all the other things we've been talking about, but we need that to happen. Like Bill McKibben says, we can't compete with the vast amounts of money and political influence that corporations have. But what we have is our bodies, our courage, and our spirits. So we're going to need a lot more of us to realize that the consequences of putting our bodies on the line are far lesser than the consequences of doing nothing. So we really need to get involved with direct, strategic, well-organized actions all over the place. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
A research scientist at the Burke Museum of Natural History at the University of Washington and a member of Socialist Alternative. Jess Spear, please.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here in the freezing cold weather. I want to talk a little bit about global warming in the context of the global economy and what I think we can do to really tackle this global issue. So, in the wake of Hurricane Sandy, 68% of Americans now think that global warming is a problem. This is an increase of 22% in just the last 3 years. Yeah, this is great. But this This shows that a storm following record heat and drought can undo the skepticism that's been bought by the fossil fuel industry. Yeah, absolutely. We should be very happy about that. Unfortunate that it took a big storm, but the point is that it can be undone. But I think we also need to think about the fact that the fossil fuel industry, even having the economic power to buy that skepticism, to fund documentaries, and to fund so-called climate change experts to report on their skepticism on TV, shows us the enormous challenges that we face. The technology to transition society away from fossil fuels already exists. There is no shortage of ideas of how to power society on renewable energy. I mean, the sun and the wind are there. Why are we not using them on a more massive scale? The evidence is clear that we have to move away from fossil fuels. But why isn't this happening? I think to answer that question, we have to recognize that the way the industry, how industry is organized in the global economy is the main culprit behind climate change and the main obstacle to seriously fighting it. We should absolutely fight against the continued use of coal and oil and gas in industries that are obvious, like transportation or electricity generation. But we also have to understand that the entire global economy is fossil fuel intensive, from the way that we power production to the raw materials used to make products. The first barrier to stopping global warming is the existing fossil fuel-based infrastructure. We have to recognize that the global economy is based on profits, on maximizing profits. That means that every decision, every economic decision that's made on what is produced or how it's produced is based on increasing profits. You know, as a socialist, I see the global economic system of capitalism as the root of the problem. It fails to meet the needs of humanity, it ruins the environment, it fails to solve the global climate crisis, and ultimately needs to be replaced. Because this economic system, in its quest for profit, tends to produce a glut of goods that society really does not need. Take, for example, the plastic industry that produces a massive amount of non-biodegradable products that just end up in landfills. Billions of dollars were invested in this profit-making infrastructure, and corporations want to continue to capitalize off of that. I mean, it's extremely profitable to continue using fossil fuels. 3 of the top 5 Fortune 500 companies are fossil fuel companies. Yeah, boo. Transitioning to renewables, in contrast, is going to require that we build an entirely new infrastructure. It means that we have to find new raw materials. So the point of that is that there's no incentive, there's no economic incentive right now to make that dramatic shift. All of the solutions that have been offered so far, cap and trade, carbon taxes, going green, they all fit within the framework of this current system. Cap and trade and carbon taxes, well, I mean, I think we should absolutely put a cap on emissions, and we should charge, you know, for pollution. But unfortunately, the businesses, the big corporations that we're trying to rein in, all too often are the ones that are drafting the regulations and writing in the loopholes that allow them to continue to pollute. Going green, buying the right light bulbs or buying electric cars, well, I encourage everybody that's able to do so. It just ignores the reality that the vast majority of people in this country and on this planet cannot afford these products. And so changing our lifestyles is ultimately ineffective at pressuring industry and the government to do what is necessary. So it's clear that these solutions aren't going to work because they don't target the root of the problem. And the people controlling the global economy, they're not going to do it. That's clear. We can ask them nicely, we can try to incentivize business to do what's right, but really, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get corporations to be massively taxed? How are we going to get the government to use those taxes to fund a green jobs program? And I think to answer that, we need to think about what Carlo just talked about, the protests around the Keystone XL pipeline in the fall of 2011. You know, they were able to garner that small but really tremendous victory of postponing the pipeline decision for a whole year. You know, how did they do that? There have been protests before. How were they able to get that at that point in time? what else was going on in the fall of 2011 that changed the balance of power? Occupy Wall Street emerged. Thousands of people came out in the street to voice their anger, occupying public spaces, talking about how angry they were at the bank bailouts and economic inequality. This helped to swell the protests from 1,200 to 12,000 people. One of the leaders of the pipeline protests, Naomi Klein, she remarked afterwards, "I don't think we could have won without Occupy Wall Street. I can't imagine we could have." So there is the lesson that we have to draw from that victory. It is pressure from below, from thousands of people to millions, hopefully, eventually, in the streets, demanding change that will win the day. We must begin to build this mass movement to pressure industry and the government to do what is necessary, not what is profitable. So how are we going to build the mass movement? How are we going to get millions of people to come together to demand change? And here's what I'm going to say, something I think is, unpopular, but I think it needs to be said. We have to understand that the vast majority of people that we need to join us here on these steps and in the streets are not going to join a movement just to save the environment. It's not because they don't care, it's because they're struggling to survive. And when you're struggling to put food on the table for your family, you can't also worry about the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But the solutions to helping people gain financial stability and stopping global warming are intimately linked.
Exactly so, same problem.
Millions of people need good jobs, union jobs, jobs that pay a living wage with good benefits. And we need millions of workers to build a new electric grid. We need more mass transit, and we need millions of solar panels and windmills. A massive jobs program to power society on renewable energy could put all of these people back to work and put us on a path to a sustainable future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. So the environmental movement has to build alliances with unions, and we have to help rebuild the labor movement in this country. If we want to build a movement powerful enough to challenge this global economic system, we must put the focus on the demand for jobs. To keep up the momentum and help this movement grow, we need victories. We need the victories like Carlo mentioned about, stopping the Keystone XL pipeline. And here in Washington, if we can help to really build a movement to stop the coal terminals here in Washington, we can help build the confidence that if you stand up and fight back, you can win, so that the coal terminals can't not only be built in Washington, but not Oregon, not California, not up and down the whole entire West Coast. They won't find a single city that will allow it. So, absolutely. Beyond building movements, we have to pressure government by supporting independent candidates. We have to build the movement within the electoral system as well. At least 9 of the politicians that are going to decide the coal terminal in Bellingham have received thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from the corporations that are pushing for this. I don't have time to name them all, but they include U.S. Senator Patty Murray, U.S. Congressman Rick Larson, these are both Democrats, Democratic Governor Christine Gregoire, Democratic Bellingham Mayor Kelly Linville, and so on. And Obama has clearly shown that he's not going to stand up to big oil. He pushed to allow Shell to drill in the Arctic, and he's overseeing the largest increase in domestic oil production in a generation. So we have to stop supporting the parties of big business and Wall Street and instead run our own candidates. This can be done. Socialist Alternative ran an independent candidate for state legislator, challenging the most powerful Democrat in the Washington State House of Representatives, Frank Chop. We got 20,000 votes. 29% of the vote, with a shoestring budget and a handful of volunteers. This shows that it's possible to not only challenge the Democrats, but to win true representation. In 2013, we are calling on activists and everybody on the left to help us build a left slate of candidates to run for the Seattle City Mayor and also the Seattle City Council. If you want to help with this effort, please come see me after the rally or go to our table and sign up. I'm confident that we can build this movement, and that we can build an electoral challenge powerful enough to pressure industry and government to do what's necessary. And I look forward to working with everybody here to make that happen. Thank you.
This, we can learn to say hello rather than always making a fist. Goodbye to playground bullies, goodbye to guns and drums. I want a new America, the time has come. Yes, it's a good idea. Yes, it can be true. I want a new America, and I think you do too. Yes, the change is coming. I can feel it in the wind. I want a new America. It's coming around the bend. It's coming around. It's coming around the bend. It's cold. I don't mind being cold. The thing is, what happens to me is I cannot feel my fingers, which is okay because they know where to go. But the problem is the right hand, because I can't feel my fingers, so I don't know how I'm holding on to the flat pick. If it's falling out of my hands or it's staying in my hands, I don't know. And that's where I get trouble. This song, this is a short set, like he was saying, 2 songs. So this is the second song. This song was written in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was written to a building just like this. But it was in Minneapolis, and I was doing some work out there with the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, which was new at the time. You probably know about that, at least a little.
That's good.
By this historical decree, there got a vision. Can we find it in our dreams? And there's fire in the forest. We can't just let it burn. No one wants to do it for us. This is my job, man. There's a fire in the forest. Talk about the future. Talk about a million years. Talk about the mothers and the grandchildren. Talk about the laughter and tears. Talk about the bridge you're building. Don't burn the bridge you're building. Time is running out. As anyone can see with one foot on shaky ground. We're standing at the threshold. We're opening the door and out of the spider. Before we go down like the dinosaurs and find the forest. We can't let it burn. No, we do it for us. This is my time. We'll find the forest.
Can I get you to take one? Of course, of course. Hey guys, stop. We're gonna get in with the bear. I was thinking I'd come.
Oh, lovely. There you go. If you don't mind, I'll be great if you're your email address so I can send you pictures.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Your hair is getting very distracting.